Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. It is an honor and privilege to speak to you. 2022 is a year worthy of some meaningful reflection. There were so many forces for change. It was a year where we were recovering from a pandemic, a year where a war started, inflation has skyrocketed, and we're looking at likely a recession in next year. So today I'd like to talk to you about how technology fits into this picture. We have a pretty robust agenda today. I'd like to describe to you a little bit of the methodology that I use to try to understand technology, understand the markets, and understand the application of how technology fits in the markets. I want to talk a little bit about how to prioritize. There are so many options and so many choices here. How do you pick which one to start with? And then we'd like to talk specifically about some of the more interesting technologies that came up in 2022. And then I'd like to end with some ideas on how to think about getting ready for 2023. Before I get started, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Like many of you, I have many hats. I do a lot of different things. Um, if I were to summarize all the things I do, maybe it would be these three words. It's absorb, interpret, and distribute. I try to learn as much as I can about industries and technologies. I try to get some kind of understanding of the implications and what it means. And then I try to distribute that knowledge as fast as I can because things keep changing so quickly. And it's going to be webinars like these where I have the opportunity to get the message out, get the information out. There are many different roles and titles there. I think two that are interesting are the engineer in me. I like to take problems and analyze them, break them apart, try to solve them, try to figure out what the right answer is. As a sociologist, I like to understand the human factor. How does technology and humanity kind of mix? Where is that right blend where you can get the most effective impetus for change? And I'm the father of five, so I got a few kids in high school and a couple of kids in college right now. I'm really interested in the near-term implications of these technology trends for my sake, for their sake too as well. Things are changing so quickly. I want to know how to set up my own kids for a world where it's going to be a continuous effort, a continuous exercise of learning new things. Before I get too deep into this, I wanted to, and going back to the absorb, where do I get a lot of my information from? It's from executives. I owe a deep debt of gratitude for so many executives who have taken the time to speak to me, to share their thoughts, share their ideas of what's real and what's not. I do go to a lot of conferences, and those are great opportunities to understand how the industry, at an industry macro level, is talking about itself. But I find these one-on-one opportunities to engage with executives, to talk about leadership, to talk about technology, to talk about HR executives and managing people, and the implication of these have been real gems of opportunities to gain insights that I haven't found anywhere else. And so the trade shows are excellent opportunities to understand how the world is talking about things. The individual one-on-one conversations, I think, are really where the rubber hits the road. I do also spend a lot of time in associations. I find that this is a rich environment where vendors and restaurants, retailers come together and work together to try to set standards and make things a little bit easier for the industry at large. If you're interested in any of these videos, they're on my website. You can go to hughes.com/Tim Tang, and you can find all these different videos from retail, from restaurant, banking and finance too as well. So let's get into the meat of the material here. 2022. We're done with COVID. Well, we're recovering from COVID, maybe is a better way to describe it. But a war breaks out very early in the year. That disrupts the supply chain. That raises the price of fuel. Inflation starts to raise its head. We still have a labor shortage, leftovers from the COVID, from the pandemic. With inflation very steadily creeping, things get more expensive for the consumer, more expensive for retailers and restaurateurs. And then at the same time, there's this blurring of lines of competition. One great example would be think about the C-store industry, the grocery industry, and the restaurant industry. They're all fighting for that same consumer share of stomach, if you will. And so we have a blurring of lines as these industries start mixing, as they start going after the same consumer to address the same needs too as well. So how do we make sense of this? Well, one way to think about it is for inflation, things get more expensive for the consumer. So logically, you get a smaller share of their wallet, access to a smaller share of their wallet. Things get more expensive for the store operators. So cost of goods come up. And so with a declining share of wallet and increasing cost of goods, you get a much more narrow margin for success. And so when we start thinking about technologies, one of the ways that we can start thinking about technologies is, how do I answer this problem? How do I find a way to increase our margin for success? Well, so let's start with the decreasing share of wallets. If your share of wallet is decreasing, then perhaps I suggest one of the easiest and kind of the first steps to take is to find more wallets. And that's kind of what we saw with the National Association of Convenience Stores. In their big event this past fall, the big announcement was their new Thriver initiative. And this was arranged, this was a solution basically to try to help the independent operators more effectively manage their search, social, and their reputation online. One of the big challenges with C-stores is you could be standing in a C-store. You could do a search for coffee, and Google will tell you to go to a coffee shop 2 miles away. You could do a search for donuts, and it'll tell you to go to a donut shop, 5 miles away. It doesn't seem to recognize the opportunity, the retail opportunity that's right in front of you. And so much of what NACS is doing is trying to basically enable that individual single store operator to basically be able to more effectively manage their online presence so that the consumer can find them. Now, these are not new technologies, search, social, right? They've been around forever. But what's really interesting about this is the ability to do this on an individual operator at scale. The C-store industry has 150,000 some stores in North America. 90,000 of them are individual operators. And what was exciting is to see this kind of solution, this level of technology, this level of capability being made available to individual single site owners. So, if we think about a inflationary market where there's a decreasing share of wallet, first thing is go find more wallets. And what's really interesting here is it's feasible. Leverage the online tools that are available to increase your likelihood to be found on search. Leverage social media to increase and draw and develop a community and your audience of addressable markets, and maintain careful watch over your reputation online. What else can we do to increase our revenue streams into the stores and into the restaurants? Another thing is to look at our data and the value of our data. What I saw in 2022 was a number of store operators and restaurants were suddenly turning around and monetizing their data. I was having a lot of trouble finding a suitable image to actually talk about this. It's going through all the different stock images, nothing really came up. And then last night, I saw this announcement from Casey's. They're introducing their own retail media network. They're making all of their store data, their operational data, available to CPG manufacturers so that they can more effectively engage with the consumer, manage their inventories, and strategically kind of plan their product placements. So think about that. Who else wants access to your data? Who else can value your data? In certain industries, this collaboration with the CPG manufacturers providing them point of sale data is a normal and routine thing, except it hasn't been made available to everybody. There's always been challenges of getting the data out of the point of sale, and then in some cases reformatting it according to the needs of the CPG manufacturers. But there are a lot of kind of new and kind of interesting improvements that have been made in this space. And when we're in an inflationary market and where every dollar, every opportunity for a dollar matters, this is monetizing your data in this environment makes a lot of sense. This is another way to create some additional margin and the like. There are some caveats. The data that the CPG manufacturers are most interested in many cases, are, well, transaction data, purchasing data. A lot of it can be anonymized. There are a lot of other third parties that are also interested in consumer data, because that's where the real gems and treasures are. As you start thinking through your opportunities to monetize your data, you want to pay particular attention to the evolution of the data privacy laws. In 2022, I had the privilege of serving as the vice chair for the Data Privacy Committee on Connexus. And there we were looking at taking a careful look at just how these new laws are coming and emerging. They're gaining momentum and they're gaining teeth. When you look at, for example, the Illinois biometric laws, violations by restaurants, mainstream restaurants, have grown into the tens of millions of dollars. And for large social media companies like Facebook's, we're talking $650 million. So the penalties for violating these laws are quite steep. And the requirements of these laws are quite onerous. When a consumer comes to you and says, I want you to forget me, as an enterprise, as a business, we have an obligation to meet that request. And if, for whatever happenstance, they tell you, I want you to forget me, and then perhaps 3 months, 6 months later, an unfortunate data breach takes place, and then you're in an awkward position of saying, we're sorry, your data has been compromised in a data breach, they're going to go back to that email that they sent you 3 months ago saying, I told you to forget me. How come I have to change all my credit cards? There's some meaningful accountability when it comes to these new data privacy laws because of the likelihood of a data breach. It's not if, it's a when in many cases. And in the event of a data breach, you want to make sure that your use of consumer data has been properly, you have adhered to the proper standards. Data privacy opens up other opportunities, other liabilities too as well. Some of the most common claims are made by disgruntled workers and competition. So if you're failing to adhere to the tenets, specific ones like telling exactly, first notifying your employees that you are collecting the information, telling them why you're collecting the information, telling them for how long you intend to keep the information. If you're failing to meet on some of these basic terms, you could be found in violation of these laws. And that would give an opportunity for a disgruntled employee, for a competitor, for fines to be levied against you. So think carefully. Your data is a valuable source of opportunity from a revenue perspective. It's also a meaningful liability, and it needs to be handled carefully. But monetizing your data, that's another opportunity for increasing the revenue streams, to try to increase that opportunity and that margin for success. In an inflationary period, there's only so much you can do. Another place to look at to try to improve on that margin of success is to attack the cost of goods, the increasing cost of goods, and to try to find ways to decrease that. How can you do that? It's really interesting. In 2022, as I think through where all the activity, all the announcements kind of took place in terms of retail technology, so much of it was focused on the customer experience. So much of it was focusing on how do we create that compelling brand experience for our consumers and for our customers. What was really interesting about 2022 is a lot of that attention started to shift, and probably because of the rising inflation. There's only so much you can do in terms of encouraging a customer to buy from you. And what I saw a lot of retailers and restaurants do is start turning toward their back office processes and starting to realize, hey, there's opportunity there. There's some fat there that can be trimmed, that can be optimized. And so in 2022, I think that was the year of transition from customer experience to store operations, to looking through and saying, what are the many different ways that we can try to optimize and kind of improve our operations. It's really interesting to see how the different industries that are out there are in such different places when it comes to the back office automation and the like. There are many industries that are still stuck with paper invoices. And the big challenge with paper is very difficult. You can't digitize it. Paper is not digital, and so there's no opportunity. When you think about all the tools and all the elegant solutions from an AI, machine learning, automation perspective, all those rely on digital data, and everything that's in paper is off limits in many cases. And so there's, for so many retailers, the digitization of their paper invoices, that whole process was the first and foremost priority. Email is one step better. It's better than paper. But then there's a lot of scraping that needs to take place in trying to improve and grab the essential data elements so that you can start to feed and digitize that, set up your unstructured, structured kind of data warehouses, data lakes, so that you can start to run your AL and ML and analysis on the solutions. But I think what was really interesting in 2022, in part likely because of the labor shortage and the need to optimize, the need to reduce the amount of labor hours required to run the stores is all the applications of RPA, and even moving beyond RPA into some API interfaces too as well. Robotic process automation, being able to automate the whole process of ingesting key aspects, key lines of transaction processes, operational processes, so that you're essentially hand-free, to be able to free up your store managers and your store employees to focus on the customer as opposed to managing all the paperwork that's required to successfully run the store. I think what's really interesting is that as we set the stage for RPA and API and the platforms, we're moving very quickly into a world where natural language processing and even these past couple of weeks, the narrative has been dominated with ChatGPT. You know, it's interesting to see what the next level, once we've got our data available to us, what does the next level of data experiences look like in these scenarios? You know, it's intriguing because when you think about data, this is a place where it can become easily a competitive advantage, but only if you can make it available to your organizations. You know, some of the really interesting innovations that I saw in 2022 was focus around the democratization, the democratization of data, making data available to everyone in the company, not just the data analysts, not the data scientists, or not even just the business people, but everyone in the company, to the secretaries, to the admins, to the welcome desk, to the front desk. I saw some really interesting technologies and prototypes that were being developed by KRS, where they were using natural language processing, where an admin could simply type a question in there, and it would go from the question of, hey, what happened or what's wrong with store 123, and with customers complaining about the soda machine, and it would go through and actually translate through the natural language processing tools that are available in so many of the cloud providers today, and interpret that into a SQL command that could actually let it query. Tell me about what happened in all the stores data in the Northeast. I mean, this kind of democratization of data, access to data by non-technical individuals, means not the whole company can benefit from data. Data becomes a competitive tool and a competitive advantage that can be leveraged by all the employees in a company. And the more access to the right kind of data enables them to increase and improve their ability to serve your customers and the like. So I think not only the AI and the machine learning kind of analysis of trend analysis, predictive analysis is exciting and intriguing. I think what's also very interesting is how we're going to make this data accessible throughout the organization so that the entire organization now can operate and develop that culture where the entire organization is competently leveraging data in the course of their needs to run the business and kind of meet customer expectations. I got to talk about ChatGPT just because it's been so dominant. It's been so impressive. I would just offer a couple of thoughts. We're talking about a world where, it's an infant, right? Over these past couple of weeks, and this infant can write its own code and can write college level essays. And yes, it makes lots of mistakes. But particularly as we start to think about over the next couple of years, think about just over the past years of how frequently and how often we use Google. What does a market look like when a tool like ChatGPT has reached the maturity that Google search does for all of us today? It's remarkable. Also, I think just the other comment that I'll make about that is how a 170-person company can outcompete Google in an area of their own core competence. It's astounding, and it starts to realize that it's not just about numbers and it's not just about big tech. Some of the most interesting innovations are coming from companies of all sizes. So we're talking about automating the back office. How else can you automate? Some of the most common problems that I think, it's not just about a matter of automating the back office. There's an opportunity to also automate the stores. We talked a little bit about the paperwork in the stores. If I were to say, what is the one most exciting piece of technology that I'm seeing in 2022? I wouldn't be pointing to ChatGPT. That's a neat emerging technology. I think in terms of applied technology, I think what's most interesting to me is computer vision. I'm astounded at how prevalent computer vision has been deployed. It would be something if it was just one instance of it, but it's a multitude. Walking through these trade shows, it's a multitude of implementations and executions in terms of applied computer vision. Actually, I was even surprised, to be honest with you, that even my own company, Hughes, I did not realize this until a few months ago, that we've been using computer vision to actually improve the quality of our installers, to basically assess the quality of their installation activities. Computer vision has reached that kind of state of maturity where it's starting to become mainstream, and it's become useful in many areas in terms of security surveillance. The area in the application that I'm particularly interested in, though, is as it applies to store operations. The ability to automate some of the capabilities in order to elevate store operations performance. You know, a common problem that Gray Taylor of Connexus will talk about is the no tomatoes problem. That you're trying to order a sandwich, you want some extra tomatoes on it, and you put the order in, and you send it to the restaurant or you send it to the grocery store, and then when you get your delivery, you discover there's no tomatoes in there. Because you put in an order, you paid for an order, but when the cashier or when the store or the restaurant went to make the order, they discovered that there's no tomatoes. You know, we're in a world right now where that kind of misstep with mismanagement of the inventory happens frequently and is common, popular, and it's difficult. It's difficult to have an accurate, real-time understanding of exactly what your inventories are. And so you either you overgauge to try to oversupply, so to avoid those scenarios where you run out, but that increase your waste and the like. And so the question then becomes, how do I get a better real-time understanding of my inventory? And I think this is an area where computer vision has matured to the point of being able to actually solve these problems, where we can, with just the same video cameras that you're using to monitor your store security, can leverage and analyze those video streams to understand in a real-time fashion what your exact inventory is in the moment. And so that when that order comes through, we can immediately notify the customer, I'm sorry, there are no tomatoes here. Would you like something else? It's much better to tell the customer the bad news ahead before they've paid for their purchase, instead of after they've paid for it, expected it, and then find out at the moment of delivery, oh, there's no tomatoes, and the like. And what is this technology? I wanted to show you just kind of one example of it from, this was actually what Spark Cognitions was showing in some of the conferences, several of the conferences that I actually had the privilege of attending this past year. It's intriguing to see what the implications of this. Again, just using, you know, standard normal video webcams even, and being able to analyze the video and get a real-time understanding of your inventory. I think what excites me about this is the implications for getting us a step closer to that ideal of a virtual store manager. You know, one of the statistics that plagues the business enterprises, your employees, most employees, are only, generally speaking, about 30% engaged. And what is the problem? Why is it that employees aren't giving forth their best and brightest efforts in many cases? Well, in retail, one of the areas that I would suggest to you is because nobody's paying attention to what they're doing. And if nobody's paying attention to what they're doing, why would they bother? What's really intriguing about these computer vision technologies is now, if I have the ability to maintain an automated real-time understanding of inventories in the freezer, shelf inventories too as well, why not gamify that store employee's role? Tell them, hey, for every hour that the shelves are managed at least at a 90% loading level, you get 1 point. And for every hour that they're not, you lose a point. And the whole idea is to say, at the end of the week, at the end of the shifts, whoever has the most points will have the first chances, selections of what shifts they get, or first priorities for time off, or even, you know, an extra day off, or whatever the case may be. The interesting thing about computer vision is now we have the ability to maintain a real-time understanding of the store operational activity, productivity, and associate and correlate that with the individual employees who made the work, who were serving during those shifts. And the ability to gamify the job, to say, hey, the game here is to keep the shelves full, or the game here is to keep the bathroom clean, or the game here is keep the line short. It brings out, it makes the job more entertaining, more fun, and actually more satisfying and more rewarding for the employees. So the idea of combining computer vision then with some of these other solutions like task management from companies like a Jolt or something along those lines, now I have the ability to automate a task and say, hey, little Johnny, it's time to refill the soda machines, or it's time to refill the ice cream freezers. We can actually start automating the task assignments to the individuals, at the appropriate time. So I think the intriguing thing right now is that I see us from multiple industries on that cusp of being able to get to a virtual store manager. And this is going to be interesting for the next thing that we'll talk about, but let's go ahead. So we have, again, the idea is, hey, we're in an inflationary period, so we need to find ways to increase our revenue streams. We need to find ways of decreasing our cost of goods. Intelligent inventory management is an ideal place. Let's take the computer vision to attack one other problem that has been leftovers from the pandemic, and that would be the labor shortage. We're still in a very critical crisis where it's hard to find people, hard to keep people, and the people that we have, they're very expensive to a large extent. One of the dynamics of labor is that the less experience the person has, the more of them there tend to be. And as you start climbing up that layer of needing more talented, more experienced individual, it's a much smaller population that you have to work with, and they're far more expensive because everybody's looking for the same people, particularly at the frontline store level. And so how does technology help in that space? Well, go back to the narrative of the computer vision. Let's find ways to leverage technology to make the job simpler, to make the job not only more fun for the employees to do, but to simplify the job so that that lower talented or lower skilled individuals, people with less years of experience and less real firsthand experience, can actually do the level in a more competent type manner with the same experience. That entry-level individual with the right tools and technology could perhaps function as well as somebody with 1 or 3 or more years of experience, maybe even at a store manager type level. And so I think the idea of being able to leverage technologies such as computer vision to simplify the role. And I'll give you some thoughts on how to do that. I think one of the is looking again for a good example of this, and I think we're still kind of in the early stages of it. But maybe one area to think about is data and the visualization of data. Like many businesses, our business is full of all kinds of dashboards. There are all kinds of ways all kinds of tools that we have to understand what's going on in the network. And these are tools where it requires a certain level of competency. You need to understand something about congestion, packet loss, latency, and the like. What if we could take all of this data and simplify it to something that an entry-level person with little or no experience could make sense of, or get some understanding and guide it? Maybe something like this, where the idea is to saying, Mr. Entry-level exec, the role of your job is to make sure that we stay within normal operations. Normal is that little gray, blue shaded area. The green dot is where we are today. Whenever the green dot gets outside of the blue dot, the blue shaded area, we've got a problem. It's time to it's time to investigate. It's time to explore. This type of approach is particularly interested in the realm of cybersecurity. I've been very intrigued by how many different MDR, EDR solutions are out there on the market today that have really reduced that entry-level cybersecurity position to something like this, to basically the idea of saying, here's what normal looks like, and when the dot gets outside of the normal range, we got a problem. And then from there, to go through and basically coach the person on how to basically troubleshoot and resolve these issues. Our markets today, we have an insufficient supply of cybersecurity executives to the tune of 3.4 million. We need more talent. Well, until we get those additional 3.4 million, which we probably never will, then we need to work with the talent that's available to us today. And I think the way to be able to take complicated roles like cybersecurity and to elevate them is to leverage these kinds of intuitive dashboard tools, where an entry-level person over time can still immediately actually be productive in terms of highlighting issues, and then be coached automatically on the job to basically, here are the steps. In the reason why the green dot is outside of that blue shaded area is because these 3 things happen. These 3 things happen for potentially these 4 reasons. And these 4 reasons require these kinds of interventions. Go look for these kinds of things and really just have the system start training the entry-level people to start acting like more experienced and more capable individuals. So when we think about the labor shortage, when we think about ways to reduce and improve our store operations, we want to think about ways where technology can be leveraged to take a lower skilled individual, which there are many more of, and even though minimum wage is coming up, they're still less expensive than the higher skilled individuals who are far shorter in supply and far more expensive. So this idea of simplifying employees' roles is a compelling and a powerful opportunity that I think the technology is ready for, and it's actually already being employed in so many ways when we think about what's happening with the visualization of data in conjunction with these task management solutions. And this not only creates the opportunity for lower skilled individuals to be able to act like higher skilled individuals, it creates the opportunity for those few higher skilled individuals that we have to magnify their influence over the organization. That a single store manager who would ordinarily maybe be able to handle 1 or 2 stores, maybe with the right tools, could manage and provide their same level of competent expertise over 10, 20 stores and the like. And so the whole idea is to magnify an individual's capability, competency, and to also magnify their scope in terms of their capacity to manage locations. What are some other ways that we can actually decrease the store operations, the cost of goods? Another effective way that I would kind of highlight is looking at integration and intelligence and immediacy, specifically as it relates to digital signage type solutions. You know, these technologies have become kind of mainstream, particularly over what we've seen over the past couple of years with COVID. There was an urgent, immediate need for the corporate headquarters to be able to address and speak directly to the front line during these moments of crises. Well, the moments of crises have not stopped. So the solutions that have been deployed to enable this face-to-face communication or face communications with the store employees is still there. But when we think about digital signage, it's more than just simply putting up a pretty picture in front of the employees. You know, I think the exciting piece in this space is not so much the screens. The screens have been around for decades. The images have been around for decades. What's really kind of exciting is what's happening behind the screens. What's the stuff that you don't see? I think the most exciting space, what's ironic, is the most exciting innovations in digital signage are the things you don't see. It's the ability to integrate with your point of sale system or your commerce engine or your back-end platform. It's the ability to basically in real time dynamically ingest pricing data, product data. It's the ability to adjust your playlist dynamically based on the type of individuals that are in the store. So the integration, the intelligence, you know, first the integration, just the ability to get these systems talking together, to be able to take data, point of sale data from your pricing data and automatically update your menus, dramatically eliminates, and it allows another level of customization. Certain markets need certain prices. Well, you don't want to throw the same price and leave money on the table in some markets and then make yourself non-competitive in other markets. You want to be able to price to the need. And I think some of the more interesting things that are taking place kind of in this space is we're going from not only being able to automate the retrieval pricing, but then to even do our pricing from a dynamic perspective. Dynamic pricing, real-time pricing. Your consumer is willing to pay more for that very same hamburger, perhaps $6 during a lunchtime peak if they can get it fast enough, and maybe $5 during an off-peak. Let's have the prices adjust to the need or adjust to the demand. You know, it's particularly important when you think about the restaurant industry. The kitchens are manufacturing plants, essentially, and there's a top line limit. You can't produce any more from a given, every kitchen has a maximum capacity, so you're not going to be able to produce any more from that kitchen at some point in time. And so either A, you keep creating other lines or the like. Well, if you've got a fixed amount of maximum capacity, then the only way to optimize your revenue is to start dynamically adjust your prices so that you can actually meet and align with the demand and the time of demand to encourage those customers who are coming in during peak to maybe consider off-peak purchases too as well, so that you can start to moderate and level out the demand and get more use out of your kitchens. Because yes, there's a maximum amount of capacity, but it's not held at the same time. That maximum amount of capacity is just held in the same 3-hour, 4-hour, 2-hour, 3-hour windows during your peak times as well. And so the idea is now to leverage dynamic pricing to kind of take advantage of some of those off-peak type experiences. So the integration, intelligence, immediacy, real-time understanding. These are other ways that you can start to increase, well, in this case, maybe reduce your cost of goods, reduce the operational burdens of having to kind of manually deal with your prices, and perhaps even increase your share of wallet by adjusting your prices. So maybe I should have moved that one somewhere in the middle of those two as well. What are some other ways that you can reduce your cost of goods? I will tell you one of the most interesting conferences that I went to this past year, I would say would be the NRF Protect. I've been to this conference for several years now, and every year, this is a loss prevention conference. This is a conference where people get together, retail executives come together. There's a safety element too as well, so it's loss prevention and usually safety as well. But they're coming together with the single purpose of, how do I catch the shoplifter? How do I catch people who are stealing from my stores and the like? And so it's a little orthogonal or a little outside of my realm of IT managed services, but I've gone to this conference because there is so much to learn from kind of this another side of the business. But what was fascinating this year was it wasn't just loss prevention personnel or executives. This year, there was a whole half side of the room of IT executives. It was remarkable. It wasn't just IT executives participating in the conference. They were on stage with the loss prevention conferences. It was a intriguing conjunction of two functional groups. And it was the same theme that was very effectively conveyed over and over and over again. We have to work together, because the nature of fraud is it starts online and then it gets monetized in the store. So it's kind of remarkable where the loss prevention people are saying, if the criminals are omni-channel in their attacks, starting online and monetizing in the stores, then retailers are going to have to be omni-channel in their defense. And we're going to have to work together. And it's intriguing because these two industries operate quite independently of each other. And yet the market need right now is, how do I catch that criminal? How do I catch the criminal who goes into the store and sees a stack of gift cards and just quietly grabs the whole stack, goes to some corner, scans all the codes of the gift cards, maybe even goes to the effort of peeling off the pin code cover, because you can buy those stickers off of eBay, and catching the pin of all those codes, and then very quickly puts a new pin code scratch off sticker on the gift card, and then puts that stack of gift cards back on the shelf, and then just waits for some unsuspecting consumer to grab one of those gift cards, put $50, $100 on the gift card, and the card activates. And the criminal has been sitting there waiting for that moment of activation, because as soon as he sees $50 applied to that gift card, he immediately goes on and drains that card, because he has the code, he has the PIN, and he can use the card before the consumer has even the opportunity to wrap it up and give it to their friend. How are you going to catch that criminal? And that's what's so interesting about this space is this is an arena where now we need data. This is an arena where the loss prevention security experts and the IT executives need to start combining. We need point of sale transaction data. We need to understand, when is there an unusual number of gift cards that are being redeemed and then complained about? Because if the first two gift cards were, or as soon as we understand that gift card number 1 and gift card number 2, we have complaining customers, then it's quite likely that the remaining 35 gift cards on that rack are also compromised too as well. Thieves are very efficient. They don't want to sit there and wait around any more than they have to. And so how can retailers more effectively, quickly catch these kinds of tactics? It's where the real world, real life, and the online world need to come together. The loss prevention security professionals and the IT professionals. IT professionals have lots and lots of data. They just don't know what to do with it. Security professionals don't have very much data, but they know what they're looking for. They know how the criminals act. And we need to put these two, what we saw in our Protect, it was the first time I've seen these two organizations come together and saying, we need to work together. It was a beautiful merging of saying, we got a common foe, and we need to bring both of our functions and capabilities together. And so I think this is an arena that's ripe for evolution. And I think there's already an immense amount of success with some of the bigger retailers, where even being issued hundreds of patents around some of the innovation of how they're able to catch and deter fraud. But eliminating fraud is a very effective way of reducing your cost of goods. And unfortunately, in this day and age, in the nature of what we're dealing with, it's not the normal fraud. It's not somebody lifting, stealing and shoplifting. It's going to require another level of complexity, another level of engagement in order to catch these criminals. It's everything from the analysis of when the fraud happens, where the fraud happens, and what else is likely to be fraudulent in those situations too as well. And can we get the rest of those cards before somebody else buys them and has a bad experience and the like. I have one final idea for trying to improve this world. So, we've talked about, we're in an inflationary period, right? We have a reduced access to the share of customer wallets. So we need to find more wallets through search, social, and reputation. We need to find other revenue streams like monetizing our data. And at the same time, while we're looking for more revenue, we need to start finding ways to reduce our costs. We can leverage technology to more intelligently manage our inventory, to simplify that employee role, and maybe even elevate their performance in that role. We can look at ways to automate the engagement we have with our customers through more intelligent signage, digital signage, and we can reduce the fraud. One final area that I would like to kind of offer to you is eliminate the leaks. We are in an age right now where the nature of commerce, the nature of restaurants, the nature of retail, banking, and finance, the nature of serving consumers today is extremely digitally dependent. And it creates an incredible opportunity for us to reach a much larger base of customers, particularly in situations like a pandemic where store traffic is on the decline. But it also creates an enormous liability too as well. For so many, as I talk to operators, restaurant operators, store operators, my first question is, how much of your business is mobile now? How much of your business is through the third-party DSPs or through some kind of online order or platform and the like? And the answers are outstanding. Thousands of dollars a day in many cases. It's outstanding. And then I ask the next question of, and then how are you supporting that? And they'll ask, what do you mean? And it's like, how are you supporting thousands of dollars of days of business? What are you using to support? It's like, well, I got this $59.99 internet connection coming into the store. Well, how often does that go down? I don't know, maybe once a month, maybe once every couple of months or so, not too often. How many days does it go out for? Maybe a day or two. Let's do the math here. 1 or 2 days of an outage at thousands of dollars of mobile, you can do offline credit card transactions when your network goes down. That's not a problem. But there's no such thing as an offline mobile order. You're not going to get that offline. And so when you think about, how digitally dependent your business is, look at the infrastructure that's being used to support it. And complete outages are actually not that common. I mean, for most locations, they're reasonably serviced in many cases. But what's far more common is congestion. And this is true because you experience it every every once in a while at home. It's that moment where your Netflix gets interrupted, or your Zoom conference call when you're working from home doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. What happens far more often than a complete outage, what happens probably on a weekly, if not even daily type basis, is congestion. It's those moments where that gigabit circuit that you bought is giving you less than a couple hundred kilobits. And because there's so much stuff going on in the home with so many devices, have you counted the number of devices that have an IP address in your store, in your homes? Have you counted the number of devices that have IP addresses in your store? And do you add on top of that all the IP capable devices, internet capable devices that your customers are bringing into your store? The watch, the phone, the tablet, the computer. I mean, it's a walking multi-dwelling unit shared internet problem, right? Where you could have literally hundreds of devices sharing a single internet connection, and that consumer grade internet connection is struggling to keep up in infrequent cases with the demand that's being asked of it. And every time things get slow, the customer experience goes down, you lose orders, and you lose opportunity to transaction with your customer. The new phenomenon, the paradigm change in today's world over the past couple of years is, now that we've moved to such a mobily dominant world, is that internet connection is standing between your point of sale and your customer. And so all of its liabilities, all of its issues, slow application performances, now become a customer-facing issue, an employee-facing issue too as well. So when we think about the leaks, we think about where are the opportunities to improve the business. Pay very careful attention to incomplete orders. You're not just losing the order that the customer was trying to complete. You're losing the order that they tried to complete, the future ones that they were going to complete in the following weeks because they don't want to have a repeat experience, and they're going to whatever other restaurant they chose to and the like. So pay particular attention to those missing orders. Pay particular attention to employee complaints about slow application performances. It's not always the cloud, the application, and it's many times, particularly if it's the same kind of consistent base, when all the applications are performing slowly, it's not likely that there's it could be, but it's not likely that it's the cloud at general is at fault. It could be very well possible that you're having a congestion issue with that last mile internet connection. Think about building the proper foundation for the magnitude of business that's at stake. Think about augmenting your current internet connection with a backup connection, with a cellular backup, an LTE backup. Think about elevating your consumer grade internet with an SD-WAN solution that has the ability to leverage both connections simultaneously, has the ability to understand which one is running more congested than the other, and has the ability to dynamically manage your applications, to be able to shape traffic so that your point of sales, no matter what's happening, your point of sale transactions are always going through and you're able to take money from your customer. Even if it means that your video surveillance or your software updates or whatever needs to take a back seat. So think about elevating your infrastructure so that it can align with the business value that it's bringing to your business and the magnitude of business that's at stake. Another thing to maybe think about in terms of leaks is underperforming stores. This one, I use this, I got this from Jordan and Tammy at Abbott. You know, if your store has a 5% improvement over, improvement over week-over-week sales, month-over-month sales last week, is that good news or is that bad news? Well, 5% improvement, 10% improvement, typically you say it's good news. But what if you knew that all of your peers in that same region improved 20, 25% over that same period? Well, your 5-10% is then actually bad news. It should have been 20-25%. If you lost 10% week over week, month over month last week at a set of stores, is that good news or bad news? Well, if everybody else lost 20% and you only lost 5%, that's actually good news. You don't need to keep pushing on your employees to do better. You need to encourage them to keep doing whatever that is that they're doing because they're outperforming the area. Sometimes to understand your KPIs, you need more data. You need to understand what's happening around in the other locations around me too as well. And I think the idea is that it's not enough just to have your own data. Understand where's the market data? Where's the other opportunities? This other one, the long lines, you know, a lot of conversations with companies like Spark Cognition, like, you know, point of sales know about the transactions that completed, but the point of sale knows nothing about the transactions that didn't complete. They know nothing about the long lines that set up. They know nothing about the customers that came into the store and then turned around and walked out. How are you going to get that data? And even better, if you know that you have long lines, is there a way that you can gamify this and have your employees respond to long lines and saying, hey, one of your metrics is to keep that line short. How long are the lines during your typical shift, and your ability to basically kind of manage more effectively customer lines. And then finally, when it comes to eliminating the leaks, probably the one that's maybe the most serious and the most well understood and yet the most least acted upon is cybersecurity. It's shocking every time that the reports come out, that the revised annual reports come out, that we're sitting at a PCI compliance of about maybe what, 30%, 35%. It's shocking that basic cyber hygiene is still not being done at such a large scale. And you know what's really interesting? We are moving very quickly to PCI 4.0. So the world is changing, and we're still not in a place where the old stuff hasn't been taken care of yet. And the world is changing. With PCI 4.0, you know, the rules change. You know, typically today, you know, there's an acceptance and understanding that, hey, whenever your back office takes data from your point of sale, as long as your back office is not taking credit card information, it's okay. Well, it's not really okay. Well, PCI 4.0, it's going to be very clear it's not okay. Anything that touches that cardholder data environment, by definition, is going to become part of that cardholder data environment, even if it's not cardholder data that's being used or accessed. Now, these are some meaningful paradigm changes that are taking place in cybersecurity. And these are areas where more attention needs to be paid, particularly when you combine the changes in cybersecurity with the data privacy rules too as well. This is not an area where you want to learn about it after a breach has happened. Learn about the rules. Learn about what you should have done after you've incurred the liability, after the ransomware attacks. You want to start preparing for these issues ahead of time, because when these leaks hit, they hit hard, and they have a way of ending businesses. And so pay attention to the leaks. So we've talked about 2022, a year in tech. Lots of new technologies are coming to bear, lots of new opportunities, even in the midst of a recession, to find ways to find more wallets, to improve your access to communities online, to be able to monetize the data that you have. What's really exciting is where technology now fits with the maturity of some of the computer vision solutions, so that it can maybe help you more intelligently and more effectively in real time manage your inventory, maybe even gamify your employee experience. Simplifying the employee roles. You know, we can now put pieces of technology together, the computer vision with the task management, and start making the job easier for employees, where a more easy to find, less experienced employee can operate with the competency of the harder to find, more experienced employees. And the harder to find, more experienced employees can magnify their talents across a multitude of stores with some of these technologies. We have new opportunities to automate our signage. There are new threats when it comes to fraud, and new tactics that are available to us in terms of how we combat fraud and to reduce fraud. And then finally, there's the opportunities to just eliminate other leaks. Let's go find the leaks, reduce the cost of goods. Let's increase that margin. So even in an inflationary 2023, we're still able to kind of operate successfully. I'd like to maybe leave with you some ideas, a couple ideas to think about. I encourage you to look at some of these industry associations. I spend a lot of time in them because it's a place where retailers, restaurants come together to problem solve. And it's what's outstanding about it is the problems are very similar and very well known. You're not alone. And what's exciting is when the community, when the industry comes together, the restaurants and the retailers and the vendors and the suppliers come together to solve these problems. We're developing frameworks to first understand the problem. Remember, understanding the problem is half the battle. We're developing these frameworks to be able to understand what the problem is, and then leveraging these frameworks to develop tools to basically automate the solutions to them. And so my encouragement to you is to look at associations like the Restaurant Technology Network or the IFBTA, the International Food Technology Beverage Association, or even Connexus if you're in the C-store industry. There are a number of organizations like that I encourage you to think about participating in. These are areas where we can grow in our ability to understand the business, but also understand the solutions that are being developed and actually maybe even influence the development of solutions that may not exist. One other thing that I would encourage to you that really strikes me about 2022 is the US government. I am stunned by the level of activity as it relates to technology by the US government. And the reason I bring this up, because is that when we think about digital transformation or customer experience, one of the main tenets there is your customer's expectation is always being set by their last digital experience, whether it's in your industry or not. Restaurants are not just competing with restaurants, banks are not just competing with banks. When it comes to digital experiences, everyone's competing with everyone in terms of the digital experience that they provide to their customers. And when I look at what's happening at the U.S. government, I had the privilege of attending the National Association of State Technology Directors, their annual conference, and participating on an AI Ops panel there. I am stunned by what I see taking place at the state level. That states are embracing technology at a velocity that I have never seen. They're using computer visions to enhance traffic flows in major cities. They're using edge IoT technologies, and they're even building private 5G networks to improve the security of their offices. And their use of AI ops is outstanding. So the reason I bring this up is, again, your competition when it comes to digital customer expectations, customer experience is being set by your customer's last digital experience. So imagine if the next time your customer goes to their Department of Motor Vehicle, and instead of having an experience that is, material for some comedy show, they have an outstanding experience where everything is understood. All the background information that they need to get their license renewed, they are in and out in less time than they expect, in less time than it takes to pick up coffee from a coffee shop. When government agencies start elevating the customer experiences in their offices with all of these technologies, what's astounding to me is that during the past 2 years, what I saw was the government accelerated their adoption of technology. They took advantage of the law and accelerated their engagement with technologies. When they start elevating customer experiences at a state government level, local government, federal government level, it's going to elevate expectations of the consumer. It's going to redefine that sense of convenience for retail, for restaurants, for banks, and the like. So, a couple of just closing thoughts here to leave you with. We change when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of the change. There's always a pain associated with the change. But in this past 2022, I think there was a fairly meaningful elevation of the level of pain, and it created an opportunity that was ripe for transition, ripe for change. And my encouragement to you is that so many of the technologies that we've been looking at for the past 3 years, 5 years, and so, they've matured to the point where now applied solutions are not only real, they're effective at improving operational performances for retail, for restaurants, and the like. And so my encouragement to you is to pay attention to the opportunities. You can use frameworks from these associations. Those are very compelling tools for assessing kind of where the status of your retail tech stacks, and also providing guidance on how to deal with the existing tech debt that's latent in everybody's. You know, a technology strategy for a store is always going to vary from one store to store, not so much on what they need, but on what they have. And so these frameworks are effective ways of assessing what is your current situation. And then, you know, when you look at it, look, depending in each store, and there's plenty of help available to this, but each store is going to be different then in terms of, but my encouragement to you is to prioritize, you know, the smallest investment for the greatest bang. The idea when it comes to retail technology strategies is you're looking to create more opportunity. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You're looking for that long-term strategy where it's with each initiative you create additional capacity for future initiatives so that you can actually get your business to where it needs to be to compete not only with others in your industry, others from the other industries or competing industries, but also then even with the U.S. government too as well. And then I encourage you to just regularly routine this. This kind of tech stack is going to keep changing, and the you know, every time you turn around when the next Chat GPT shows up, you want to make sure we understand what are the implications here and how to prepare for it too as well. Again, I want to extend an open invitation. These are my favorite things to think about. So, you know, it's you know, when I think about, you know, the things that how to make sense of all this, it comes from I'd just like to extend an open opportunity to say, you know, we're here to help. We please feel free to reach out. There's I am fascinated. Again, my job is to absorb as much information as I can understand of what's happening in terms of the industries, make sense of it, and then distribute it as quickly as possible. So I am always eager to try to have a mutually beneficial conversation. There's lots more to share. There's a lot I had to cut out from this. There's lots more to share, and I'm equally interested in trying to understand what's going on out there. Maybe just one final comment about Hughes. You know, our company exists to try to make technology easier for the retail, for the restaurant industries, banking and finance too as well. We have a whole portfolio of managed services where we try to offload a lot of the burden, a lot of the common burdens that the non-competitive advantage of burdens to free up the IT staff so that they can focus on the unique stuff, the stuff that actually brings a competitive advantage, the stuff that is unique. There are many aspects of IT that is just common across the board. You know, things like, you know, cybersecurity, voice over IP, SD-WAN networks. There's things that are just common across the board. There's no competitive advantage there. And particularly for those companies that just have no capacity, my encouragement is think about leveraging managed net services. Get the common stuff off your plate so that you can focus on the stuff that makes your businesses unique. Thank you very much for participating. I really appreciate your time in this. It is extremely valuable, and I appreciate the investment you've made in watching this. I do have one more thing. If you're interested, one thing I didn't talk about that I am spending a lot of time looking at is that world of NFTs. Not so much for the cryptocurrency stuff. That stuff is entertaining. It makes for great news. I'm particularly interested in blockchain as a mechanism for facilitating digital engagement with customers. And if this is an area of your interest, please let me know. I'd be very interested in having a conversation with you about that. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.